On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we'll take a look back at the loss over the weekend to the Carolina Hurricanes, some of the storylines surrounding that game, as well as Andrei Vasilevskiy getting ever closer to getting back on the ice. We talk about that and more, but first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. Thank you for joining us on this episode. We'd just like to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're taking a look back on that game against the Carolina Hurricanes over the weekend, as well as looking at some of the storylines revolving around that game, most notably the absence of Nikita Kucherov. We get into all of that, as well as Andrei Vasilevskiy. Looks like he's ever closer to getting back on the ice. We talk about that. We talk about what his impact will be once he gets back into the lineup full time, as well as, is it time for a move? We'll talk about more about that at the end of the show. But first, I want to ask you to please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. You could also get to us by our YouTube channel. We're growing ever more, which love it. Love to see the growth. If you know someone who hasn't subscribed to the channel just yet, go ahead and tell them to do so and hit that thumbs up button. Really helps the show grow more and more and reach more and more Lightning fans. So we're starting off the episode by talking about the game over this past weekend, in which Lightning lost 4-0, and it's one of those games where, taking the Kucherov element out of it just for a second, it's one of those games where, regardless of 86 on the ice, it's a I told you so game. And what that means is, if you've been a listener of this podcast for quite some time, you know I have the utmost respect for the Carolina Hurricanes. I think that on their best night, they're probably top 3 in the league. I know that might be a blasphemous statement to some, but facts are facts, people. The Carolina Hurricanes, from top to bottom, and even from, players that we may not be too familiar with, this Carolina Hurricanes team, I firmly believe, they're probably one more player, and now really a goaltender, because their goaltender is out for the season with blood clots, which is a really scary thing. But that didn't stop them, because in this game, the Lightning got shut out by Nikita Kucherov, which probably butchered that name. But regardless of the fact, he went out there and shut out the Lightning, which, regardless of how you feel about where the Lightning are in terms of their performances, that's still a hard feat to do. Saved all 22 shots. And I've said throughout the course of the season, and I've actually said it dating back to last season, when you go into a matchup against Carolina Hurricanes, you almost have to be on your toes the entire game. You almost have to play perfect hockey in order to beat this team. And I wouldn't exactly call the Lightning's previous victory against them, in which they shut them out 3-0, which is a very surprising result within itself. I think that was kind of a fluke. I think that the Lightning caught the Hurricanes just like on an off night, and I'm not taking anything away from that win. A win is a win, especially against a very good team. But we saw this past weekend when this team is playing well, regardless of the circumstances around their goaltender, that they are a very good hockey team. And I believe it was Cooper that said this after the game, and I firmly believe with his take on this. Um, the Carolina Hurricanes played as nearly as perfect hockey as you could play on any given night, and that's a fact. I mean, you look at this game, really the only thing that they weren't able to do was score more goals. Um, I think that this Carolina Hurricanes team did everything they really wanted to set out to do. They took control of the game early on. They outshot the Lightning 15-9 in the first period, which is a tale as old as time. I mean, if you've been following this show pretty much since its inception or even the last 2 years, you know that the Lightning just are not a consistently good team in the first period. Now, that storyline has kind of changed in recent weeks. We've seen better performances out of the Tampa Bay Lightning, but now we've seen kind of in this game at least uh, things get semi back to normal. And are we concerned about this? No, I don't think that it's really a cause for concern. All that the Lightning could do, as much as it pains me to say this, because we say this after every loss. It's you just got to get back to square one and just go back to what has worked for you. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I will say though that I think the thing that really did affect the Lightning in this game, and I will preface that by saying they did get some good looks in this game, and the Canes goaltender was just better. I thought he was very good. I thought that there was he was just very calm, cool, and collective throughout the course of the game, and you don't have to be overly impressive to get shutouts in the NHL anymore these days. Um, Even though that the shooting and the offensive skill that we see across the league is way better than it was probably 5 years ago, I still think that the goaltending has kept up for the most part, depending on who you talk to. At the same time, the Lightning, as we know, kind of are very vulnerable when 86 is not playing or is just not playing well or just not having an effect on the game. And you saw that in this. You really saw this. If you didn't watch this game and just looked at the box score later that night and was kind of curious as to why the Lightning got shut out, it's not the whole reason, but it's definitely part of the reason. When you look at the box score and you look at the Lightning players and you just look at their shots, and not a single Lightning player got more than 2 shots in this game, except for Watson, which, if you had Watson as the shots leader on the Lightning on your bingo card, congratulations. But that's not something that I think Lightning fans or the Lightning really should hang their hat on. I mean, you got a couple of guys on this team that could score for you. Nick Paul, Braden Point, excuse me, Brandon Hagel, Steven Stamkos, Tyler Mott, who I will say has been injured and has dealt with injury early on in the season. Kind of disappointed on just how he hasn't really been able to have an effect just yet. Some games in the games that he has played, just really a non-factor. His plus minus was -2, really disappointing. You kind of figured with the way he performed in New York last year that we were going to kind of get some of that, and that's what I figured. But maybe it's just a matter of getting in groove with the system, and some players take a little longer to acclimate to their environments. I mean, you look at the box score and you look at some of the players that, yeah, you know what, there were some good passes and some good puck possessions in this game for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but when it comes down to it, it shows up in the box score that they really didn't do a good job of forcing the issue. And they didn't do a good job of really trying to make the other goaltender work for it. I know there were some shots that were difficult, but it wasn't like the guy was standing on his head all night. And when you see this box score, when you see players like Steven Stamkos who had 0 shots, when you see Brandon Hagel 2 shots, you know, in a game like that, and why I'm making a big to do with Braden Point, Brandon Hagel only having 2 shots each, Nick Paul 2 shots, Steven Stamkos 0 shots. When your big gun, who's been playing his butt off the last couple of weeks, and in some games was really only the reason why you were still competitive at all in those games, is out of the lineup, you kind of figure. And I know I've been bashing the coaching lately, but it really comes down to the players, you know, because John Cooper and co could only do so much. The players got to pick each other up. That's where the leaders got to say, okay, we got to do this, that, and the other thing. We got to go 100% out of the gates. We're at home. We're missing our big guy. We got to get something going early on because this is a good hockey team we got in front of us, and they're not going to make many mistakes. And the Lightning didn't do that. It's plain and simple. So let me know in the comments below what you think about the game. Is this just something you file away because of Nikita Kucherov not being in the lineup? I know he is the spoon that stirs the pot, but at the same time, it takes a team, not one player, to get things going. And, you know, we can't, you know, if this team cannot function properly and not score one single goal when Nikita Kucherov is not in the lineup or not getting things going, then we got a whole lot more problems than we really thought with this team. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that. We'll maybe file that away for a later date because I'm very curious to see, you know, let's face it, and I don't want to jinx anything. Kucherov will get hurt at some point. It whether it may be a 2 to 3 game kind of thing or something a little bit more significant, I don't know. I hope it's nothing at all, but you know, it's just something that is a possibility that we will have to expect at some point. But in the meantime, coming up in our second segment, we'll be talking about Andrei Vasilevskiy. He's getting ever closer. Was at practice earlier today. We talk about all of that. You know, is he going to be the difference maker on this team? The answer that I have may not surprise you. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our first sponsor of the day, and that is our friends over at eBay Motors. Now, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle, level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back because eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. So as always, I'm going to thank everybody for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. We are available wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We are also available on SiriusXM. Our current partnership includes everything. You could download it. The Lightning are on tomorrow night. Hopefully they could get things going against the Blues, and they play tomorrow night at 7. And you could catch every shot, hopefully goal tomorrow night. I would expect a little bit more offensive against the Blues. So you could go ahead and go to SiriusXM and listen to the game there, and just search Lightning, Tampa Bay Lightning, and you could listen to the game on there. So looking at kind of the big storyline that's been pretty much dominating the Lightning season and has at times made me very aggravated is that Andrei Vasilevskiy's been out. There's a good number of people that very much think that, once the Big Cat's back in net, that all is well. The Lightning will get back to their old selves. And if you're still part of that group that firmly believes that once he gets back in net, this team will exponentially play better, well, I have to break it to you. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You saw it last year. This team made mistakes throughout the course of the season, just did not play well in front of him. And, regardless if we get Vezina Trophy Vasilevskiy or last year Vasilevskiy, I hate to break it to you, they still have to play better. And if they're still playing this way in front of Vazzy, really what he does is not going to make that much of a difference. You might win. There are some games, I will say, this year that the Lightning could have won if he was in net and he was playing like his stereotypical self. I mean, you look at this past game against Carolina, if Vasilevskiy plays, maybe it's 2-0 instead of 4-0. Maybe he makes a couple of spectacular saves, gets the team going. But at the end of the day, if this team doesn't score, what he does really doesn't matter. And if this team continues to just give away the puck in the neutral zone, just have poor nights where they just go out and do absolutely next to nothing offensively and aren't able to do anything early on, to where we're basically transported to last season, where this team just wakes up midway through the second period and now the Lightning are rolling, but it's all too late. That's how you wear out your goaltender. And we saw it. There was times when Andrei Vasilevskiy was playing phenomenal. We really thought at certain points that this is it. He's going to turn it around. This is where we get the guy that we've known and come to love over the last couple of years. This is where he starts to get back to where we know what he could do. But at the same time, the Lightning weren't really doing anything at certain points to help him. And when he comes back, and I'll tell you another thing, I'll give you another hard truth. It's very unlikely, but not out of the question, it's very unlikely that his first night back, he is going to give a spectacular performance. He's going to give a shutout. He is going to just give a performance for the ages, where we will look back and say, this is where the Lightning turned their season around, was when Andrei Vasilevskiy stepped onto the ice for the first time all year and saved 35 plus shots. Let's say that, because the Lightning give up a ton of shots. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. That's not the way the sport works. That's not the way that this team should play, because, like I said, if they just go out there thinking that 88 is going to save us every night and then we're going to get things going at some point, guess what? You're still going to probably lose a lot more games, or just as many games as you would if you had Johansson in that. And if John Cooper is smart, which I firmly believe that he is, I would imagine what's going to happen is that he's going to be getting split duty in net to start off, just to kind of ease him back into it. Then again, it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever if he plays like 5-6 games in a row once he's back, win or lose, which if that's the case, that just shows you that John Cooper's desperate to get not only him going, but this team going, because let's face it, regardless of how you feel about the Lightning currently at this point in time, when you look at them in the standings, this could all go south very fast. Now, granted, at this point in time, according to the standings on NHL.com, the Lightning are tied for 5th in the Atlantic Division. Now, yes, that plays very much into how I perceive them right now, because they are in 5th place, and they are very much a 5th place team. It was right before that game, though, that they were 2nd place. But, regardless of where they might fall or rise after this game with the Blues, they still have a lot of work to make up. They still have a lot of stuff to do before we could even consider them to be a very good hockey team or a decent hockey team. It is very early in the season. Right now, if the playoffs started, they would be tied for that 2nd wildcard spot. But at the same time, it's 15 games, so take it as you will. But yeah, I don't think Vazzy's the answer. I think the answer needs to come from within. At the end of the day, you can have great goaltending, but if you don't score, you're not going to win. It's just simple math. So let me know in the comments below what you think. Is Vazzy the savior? My opinion? No, he's not. I think that it's going to come from someone that might be a little bit over performer, or it might be someone that they need to get in a deal somewhere. We'll talk about that as the Lightning may need to look elsewhere to bring in additional help in order to score. So we'll talk about that in just a bit. But first, I'm going to talk about our last sponsor of the day, and that is our friends over at Sleeper. Now, listen, a new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Nikita Kucherov could score 50 goals. The Lightning could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. Now, this week, I think once he's all done with being sick, you got to take Nikita Kucherov. That's spending money on Kucherov is money well spent. I think we could all agree that. So all you have to do is get Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and let's say Brandon Hagel to record probably, I would say, maybe more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, or more in a giver game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Lightning fans. You could win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So wrapping things up on the show, I know I'm going to hear it. I know I'm going to hear it tomorrow or tonight. This episode's dropping a little later than I would have liked to. We will be dropping an episode early tomorrow as well, so don't miss that. But I know I'm going to hear it from some of you, and I love the conversation. I love the conversation and the feedback from all of you, and that's why it's important. You got to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go ahead. So and hit that notification button. So as soon as the newest episode drops, you will be notified. And hearing from you, whether it's in agreement or disagreement, I'm fine with that. I love hearing from all of you. I'm sure a lot of you feel way differently about this team, but something's got to give. Something's got to change because this team strikes me as a team that's not going to get any better on their own. And you're probably saying to yourself, at least some of you, that Adam, what are you thinking? We are 15 games into the season. You got to have some faith. Right, I get it, and that's fine, but it's the state of mind, I think, of some people in the fan base as well as some players, because I mean, you look at the players, you hear from the players post game, they act mad and they're frustrated, and that's right. But at the end of the day, we don't really have any concrete answers or really solutions. And that's the issue. And I kind of mentioned it before, uh, or pretty much alluded to it before that, Tyler Mott has been a really big, not really big, that's kind of an overstatement, but a disappointment. And I know he's missed time with injuries, but at the same time, coming into this season, I really thought he was going to really bolster the depth on this Lightning team. And so far, he's just been really a non-factor. And it's really concerning because if the Lightning can't get production from him, where is it coming from then? Is Eric Chernak going to start scoring goals? Is Victor Hedman going to start scoring goals? Is Connor Sheary the guy? Probably not. He'll get his goals, he'll get his points, but he's not going to be the Lightning saving grace. And, Steven Stamkos, as well as he has played this year, he's not that guy anymore. He's not the guy, nor should he be at this point in his career. He's not the guy who is going to be one of the main contributors to scoring goals on this team. Really, when you look at it, I mean, if we want to build a tier, it's Cooch, Point, and Hagel. And then you got Stamkos on the second level. I know this would be a lot better if it was animated, but so just bear with me. Imagine, especially if you're listening, imagine what this looks like. You have a pyramid. So the top of the pyramid is Cooch and Point. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to put Hagel on that second. I mean, as much as I would like him to be on the first tier, maybe let's dial it back a little bit, the enthusiasm. So you got Point, Cooch, and then Hagel, Paul, Stamkos, and then on the third would be Cirelli, Sheary, and probably that's hard because when you look at this team, you also got to assess, and ask yourself when you look at expectations for people or players to score, is this, you got to ask yourself, is this wishful thinking or is this actual expectations? Because you look at Mikey Esamont, he's shown flashes. We're kind of still hoping that Tanner Jeannot is that guy. I mean, he's so far doing everything spectacular except really score. Barre Boulet, as you know, if you've been a listener, is my guy, but at the same time, can he consistently be a third tier scorer? Tyler Mott, I think we could throw him in there. And then that fourth tier, you could put Morella, Glendening. I would say Esamont, Boulet, Jeannot. And then if you want to throw Sergachev and Perbix, I'm just not happy with anything he's doing this year. I guess we could put Sergachev because he has shown that he can score, especially on special teams, which is very good. But that kind of proves my point, though. When you look at this team and you do the tier system, and by the way, let me know in the comments below where your Lightning pyramid of scoring is, if you want to call it that. That's actually probably a very good name for it. You know, where do you rank these guys? Because it's a very good self-assessment, I think. But when you look at this team and then you do that, it's kind of a little concerning because, you know, after tier maybe 3, you're kind of fishing. You're kind of fishing for names. I would say Sergachev probably goes on the 3rd. But then at that point, you're kind of like, all right, now maybe the Lightning should look elsewhere. Now you're also saying to yourself, there's literally no cap space whatsoever. The Lightning are lucky if they could even keep the lights on right now. But they got they got a good amount of 7th round draft picks, which I know, like, I have yelled in the past and said the Lightning need to stop trading draft picks and kind of keep them to bolster their minor league system, which, yes, they should, but right now I think the Lightning are a little desperate for scoring. So if they want to trade, I don't know, I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now if you want to follow. They got a 5th this year, they got a 6th, and then they got 3 7th rounders. The 3rd being from Minnesota, which they just got in that Bogosian trade, which really did not agree with that, by the way. Kind of wish they held on to Zach. I know he didn't play a whole lot. You know, he was more of I would say like a situational defenseman. He was pretty banged up. I think also Coop kind of played him more so here and there just because, I mean, you look at Bogosian, he had a lot of miles on him. So after this year, you know, they got a 2nd, 3rd, a 4th, 5th, 6th, and then they got 2 in the 7th. And then they're back to having a fully stacked draft in 26. So, you know, I get it for those of you who are probably rolling your eyes and saying, you know, all right, that's great. Let's go out and get a person. But what are we giving up? You know, that's where you kind of have to look within, kind of evaluate what you got in the minors, what you got on the combination on your current roster right now. You know, you got to look at value. You know, obviously, I don't think Mott's going to go anywhere. I think the Lightning are still kind of hoping he starts to get things going. But you look at a guy like Morella or maybe Glendening or, you know, unfortunately, maybe an Essemont, and you package him off with a draft pick to get, you know, a 3rd line or, you know, a 4th line scorer. And I know that's like probably asking a lot. And as we've seen in recent years, especially after the Lightning have absolutely killed it at the trade deadline, I think less and less teams are willing to make deals with the Lightning, whether it's at the trade deadline or even around this time of the year. So we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I'm not saying the Lightning need to make a deal to get someone, but it doesn't hurt to kind of talk about it, because after I just kind of got done explaining, you look at this team, you look at their depth, you look at their minor league system. After really Cirelli, you know, after Cirelli on that 3rd line, you know, where else is the offensive production going to come from? Realistically, just based off of the first 15 games. And that's the question the Lightning are going to have to answer in the coming weeks. Vasilevskiy or not, if they want to continue or you know, try to get back into the mix. I know it's 15 games in, but as we've seen with other teams, it could get ugly real quick. And the Lightning have a tough schedule coming up. You know, there's, regardless of how you view any of the teams that are coming up in the next couple of weeks to round out the month of November, For this Tampa Bay Lightning team, there's no such thing as an easy game, especially when you got Boston, especially when you got Carolina again, and you got the Avalanche and the Penguins to finish up the month. So we'll be back tomorrow to talk about that Blues game. So make sure to tune in to that. But in the meantime, that will be it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.